Number 29 in the 42 ideas on leadership is adaptive leadership. This comes to us from Ron Heifetz and others. Since the 1990s, we're specifically going to be looking at how this adaptive leadership has been analysed in Peter Northouse's book, Leadership, Theory and Practice, the 7th edition. A wonderful compendium of the different articles and books by Heifetz into one theory. We're going to be looking at that here. So the adaptive leadership, well, this centres on the adaptations required of people in response to changing environments and how leaders can support them during these changes. This is what adaptive leadership is about. So it puts the follower at the centre. Now, even though they don't actually use the word followers in the literature, they're talking about the person who does the work. We're going to use followers here to make it a little bit easier to understand the concept. So we're going to be focusing on what the leader has to do to facilitate the adaptation process by the follower. Now, there's two different elements here. Initially is the difference between leadership and authority. So leadership is about work and how to mobilize people to do the work, whereas authority is around power, and it is something that is either formal or informal, but it is about the authority that is given to the leaders by the followers. So one is the leadership is about the followers, and the authority is about what the followers give the leader, either formally or informally. Now, again, here we're going to look at the three main areas that make up adaptive leadership: the situational challenge, the leader behaviors, and the adaptive work. So let's start by looking at what the situational challenge is. So this is mainly about identifying whether you need to actually use adaptive leadership, which is connected with technical adaptive challenges and with adaptive challenges. When it comes to technical challenges, there's a greater use of authority. So a technical challenge is where something is clearly defined, but the problem and the solution is already established through existing structures. It's solved by experts, and followers look to the leader to solve the problem. So these technical challenges, again, as I said, this is about authority and rather than about leadership. The other two areas, technical and adaptive challenges, we're going to look at now. So technical and adaptive challenges is where the problem is clear, but the solution within current structures is not. And together, the leader and the follower have to meet this challenge to solve the solution together. And it's possible that the leader has to implement new rules that the followers will then have to adapt to. So these new rules and these new structures are how to solve this particular problem. So again, we've got a clear problem, but the solution is not clear. The leader and follower together have to meet this challenge. The leader puts in place new rules and structures, and then the followers have to adapt to these new rules and new structures. Finally, we've got adaptive challenges. This is where the problems and the solutions are not clear, neither are clear, and it's necessary for the leader to encourage others, the followers, to define what the problems are. At this point as well, for an adaptive challenge, very often it's necessary to change people's perception or their behaviors or their values or their way of acting. And therefore, the role of the leader here is to mobilize followers to adapt to these new situations, both new situations in terms of the problems and the solutions to solve those problems. This will result in 6 different leader behaviors in terms of adaptive leadership. The first one is getting on the balcony. This means that the leader will have to separate themselves from the stress and the conflict of the moment, to step back, get some perspective, see the big picture before then moving with it. Okay, now sometimes one of the ways of doing this is to get some quiet time or to bring in an independent panel to analyze the situation, or sometimes at a meeting to sit back and act as an observer. However, at all times the leader is still engaged. It doesn't mean that they just abdicate or that they leave the followers alone to solve the problem. It's that they're able to step back and get some perspective and see the big picture. Okay? So identifying the adaptive challenge means, first of all, analyzing and diagnosing the problem. So you step back and then you look at the problem, and you first of all, as a leader, identify if it's a technical or an adaptive situation. If it's technical, well, then you use your authority, and again, remembering it's an established problem, in an established rules, and it can be solved by the established structures that exist already. However, if it's adaptive, then we need to use other skills, and that will determine then if you use authority or an adaptive approach. And again, the adaptive approach means accepting the fact that values or ways of coping or beliefs are challenged, so therefore the followers will need support in this area. And that means that it's necessary to regulate the distress created by this change, because change creates stress for everybody. It's necessary to create what they call a holding environment, which is a safe environment where people feel that they can discuss things. As it says here, it's necessary to provide from the leader. The leader needs to provide direction, protection, orientation, conflict management, and productive norms. And as a result, it's about regulating personal stress. The stress means managing yourself and others' personal stress. Maintaining disciplined attention means encouraging focus so that people do not try to avoid the change. We have to focus and we have to actually put this change in process, and we have to help people to not use avoiding behaviors. And sometimes this means talking about hot issues. That means issues that create stress or conflict for people, and that if they were left to their own devices, they would avoid talking about these areas. Finally, the next area then is to give work back to the people. It means that sometimes the leaders end up doing all the work for the followers, and the followers have to be put in a position where they are given direction. Yes, that's fine, but they're empowered to act. So therefore the leader has to encourage followers to think for themselves and to try to find their own solutions to problems as they are presented. And the last area then, which is a little bit separate to these first 5 areas, is it's necessary for the leader to give the voice to marginalized people. So maybe there are members of an out group who don't feel that they are able to give their opinions or voice their opinions. Well, it's necessary for the leader to make these people feel engaged and to give them a voice. Doesn't mean that you have to put everything into practice that they say, but they do have to feel listened and to try and encourage their entry to the in-group. The adaptive work, therefore, which is the entire idea of an adaptive leader, it's the focus and the goal of adaptive leadership, is to create this environment where you have a communication process between follower and leader, and especially creating a safe place, this holding environment where people feel free to talk about the change and to deal with the change. And the leaders also then interact with people to help them. So this is what adaptive work is about. So we've got the first of all, we've either got adaptive situations, the situational challenge, which will either be technical or adaptive or a combination of both, and then leadership behaviors in response to the need to adapt to problems or situations. Together then, this creates the adaptive leadership model, which consists of the situational challenge, leader behaviors, and adaptive work. And that is number 29 in the 42 Ideas, Adaptive Leadership by Ron Heifetz.